So I managed to find someone that was willing to let me cut the front end off of old Miata. This Miata was really rusty. Like the frame was like Swiss cheese on the other side of that cut. You can see a weld right there where someone tried to fix it, and right there where someone must have tried to reattach the front like it had been hit or just rusted away. I hope that I cut far enough back for everything I need, but either way I needed the actual rad support more than anything. And then I also got the sway bar, because the sway bar mounts are underneath the frame rail there, and if mine's twisted, I was hoping that I could probably unbolt or unweld or whatever I need to do to the mounts and then just put them on my car. I also grabbed the bumper, which is in pretty bad shape, but at least it's a bumper. And then the fender is completely screwed, but it's straight, so all the bolt holes, I can at least line up the front end of the car. So I probably won't use that fender in the end because it's absolutely full of body filler, like front to back. But as long as it's straight where it mounts, that's all I really care about. Like there isn't even an arch there anymore. The phone would focus. But yeah, the more you look at this fender, the worse it gets. And then I managed to score hood hinges, which is good, because that means I can mount the hood, and wherever the hood hangs is also another point that we can go off of. If we can get the hood to line up with the latch, then we're set. I got the subframe swapped out in the 240, so the wheels are finally straight at the back. And then I'm going to move that, I think, where the Lada was, and then move the Miata on here so we can finally start working on it. I just need to unload the truck because I'm going to use the truck to tow it around and move everything, because of course this still doesn't run. But at least I got the subframe swapped out. This is the old subframe that had rear steer, but I didn't have the rear steering rack or a delete kit for it. So now it's got a non-Hikis rear subframe with solid aluminum bushings in it. We don't even call them bushings because they're literally just chunks of aluminum holding it in. But one way or another, this is a really crappy car with a lot of really nice parts on it now, at least. And the wheels are straight, which will help it a lot for me moving around the yard, because it's a pain in the ass when the wheels are fighting you every time you try to push it or drag it. So yeah, I'm going to get into cleaning up this mess and moving that Miata over here so we can finally actually tear into it. Totally forgot about the BMW. I'll just put the 240 where the BMW is, because BMW runs at least. Lada does not, and Lada needs to go. Lada is a super cool automobile. It's a 5-speed with a locker, and it's got low range and high range. Like, it's got so many shifters you don't know what to do with them, which is awesome. And it's a sweet Russian old piece of crap. Everything works, but it has no spark, and there's a long story as to why there's no spark, and I put too much money into it and it needs to go. There's also no ownership, and the frame's really rusty on it, so it's going to be like a field truck at best anyways. 240 is where it will sit for a while. Civic can sit there. And I kind of mocked up the front end of this a little bit. Not too crazy bad now that I see like fenders on it. That fender is almost where it's supposed to be, but obviously everything's pushed way down here, so that's corner's got to come up. And then over here, it's only like, that's almost there. It's just sitting there, but it's crazy to see how much, like, how far out that's actually supposed to be and how pushed in it is. Miata's up. Very, very sketchy up here because the whole hill goes backwards, so it kind of slides a little bit if you shake the shit out of it. But it's good enough for me. So I don't have the money for a wireless impact, so I can't get the lug nuts off today until I borrow one. And then that one's stuck on there, so it's permanently a key and lug nut now. And then it's also, I didn't want it too high, but I want high enough I could get underneath and get the drive shaft out. But I didn't want it too high that I couldn't lift the motor up, because we're gonna have to lift the motor to do the front subframe. Yeah, she's like quite a few inches off. I just went off of all the markings from the other cars, and as you can see, there's a few colors in there. I just went off the marking of where the green hinges were on the hood and where the hood was on the hinges last, and then where the green hinges were on the car last. And just, it looks pretty centered to me, because from photos I've seen, the hood hinge is supposed to be pretty centered to the thermostat. Try to get this wheel off. If I get it off tonight, then I'll see what's going on in there, but I think that's mostly what I'm going to do tonight. Well, I got it off. That's kind of a huge bummer, but I think that coilover is definitely bent. And then I notice now in here, it almost looks like the whole shaft is bent. If it's bent and I can't straighten it back out, then I guess I'll need one coilover off of something. And if I can straighten it back out, I'll run it for now, but that really sucks. I was hoping that coilover was just pushed out of the bushing like this sway bar link is, but not so lucky. Everything else is right destroyed, right crunched. I haven't really gotten underneath it to look at the subframe mounts yet, but I'm really hoping that they're straight. The studs look pretty straight in there. I don't know how much I'm gonna be able to film, but I'm gonna try to at least get the drive shaft out, and it'd be nice to drop the diff tonight. And I don't know where I'm gonna split the exhaust yet. I don't know if there is somewhere to split it, or if it's gonna be cut and welded back together or what. But I got the calipers off and I got the axle nut loose, so yeah, I'm gonna just start trying to get that diff out. Out. That's the first part. I can't get the exhaust off. The only bolts on the exhaust right now to take it off are 2 14s, and they're right stuck on there, and the impact gun died. So I just did what I could without the impact. So when I get the chance next, all I gotta do is drop the coilovers or just undo the coilover bolt and leave it hanging. And then just 4 bolts should get the subframe up. That's probably not the right way to support the transmission and motor up in the air, but you know, what's the worst going to happen? Bend the rad support. So the reason that I didn't drop the exhaust when I dropped the diff, I couldn't get these bolts out. They backed out, but they cross-threaded. Even with the impact, I didn't want to shred right off because I couldn't get the impact in there without a long extension on it, so it wasn't even that strong. So I just sawzalled the heads off. I'll just bash them out and put nuts and bolts in. But I'd rather keep the exhaust at least somewhat OEM to just easily put it back together. So yeah, I just lobbed the heads off those. Should be good enough now. I can just drop the whole exhaust out, and if there's enough room to drag it out the whole back of the car. All it's left is brake lines, which looks like it's two 10mm bolts here, and just a clip to undo the brake line over there. I'm hoping the frame's not twisted, because as you can see, the rear subframe definitely shifted a little bit over here. As long as the frame's not twisted back here, I'll be all right. Because if the frame's twisted back here, it's gonna be way harder to fix. Front's one thing, but back here is almost impossible. There isn't really anywhere to grab. But I'm hoping it just shimmed over a little bit, because the holes are rounded out a bit. Even though I'm not reusing the subframe, I'm still putting all the bolts kind of back where they are, so in that way, if they're missing from the other one, or if I need to like refer to where they were, then, well, this is my map.
It's my map, so I know where they all came from.
It's all one brake line that pops off. So that's a real pain in the ass. I'm gonna have to re-bleed this caliper eventually. But we're deep in the rust belt. I can actually, without lube or anything, get this brake line off. Well, that sucked, but whatever. Brake line's down and off. And now, just the main bolts and see what happens. Trying to get this coil over in. I ended up dropping it out of here because it looks like somebody torched the control arm to heat up the bolt at one point to get it out way back, but I couldn't get the coil over down, and so the bolt would go in. So now I've been out here with a flathead, because that's all I have, trying to snap the top of it off. It's flatter now. I'm gonna try to get this last little piece off. I should go once I get this off, but it's been like an hour and a half. I should be completely done this by now. Well, I found out what all of it was. It wasn't that they torched it. Somebody welded, probably broke it once, and welded the captive nut on the back of it. I don't know if this is an OEM one or not. They did a pretty shitty weld at it. So it snapped off inside there, and now nothing works. So what I'm gonna have to do now is pull all this back out, cut a hole in the bottom of the control arm, re-weld a nut or this nut back in there, and then put it all back again.
The next day.
I didn't realize there were thread out ones. This one came most of the way out. This one I welded a nut on. And it's moving. Keep spraying it, that's why it's smoky. I'm gonna keep working it, see if I can get it out. One's a success, but I'm probably gonna have to drill this one out because it's almost all the way out, but try to weld another nut onto it, but I don't think it's gonna come. Drilled them both out, got 3/8 bolts in there, lock washers and everything. I ended up needing to drill that other one out because this one came out, but the threads are so messed up from, I'm pretty sure it cross-threaded this. So either way, I'd rather a nut and bolt like that than years later or whatever, you just replace it with another nut and bolt. So that's better. At least that's fixed. Spent way too long on that. I'm like half an hour into that already. Saying it's the best, but it fills that hole, and that works a lot better. And in here it's secure. It's a little ugly, but that's the best we're gonna get out of it. Strut goes on perfectly fine. I don't know if I'm gonna weld this back together or leave it open. I might leave it open and just fill it with like undercoating and whatnot. It's not really that structurally different than how it was. And this is just gonna end up like building welds on the inside that I can't get to prime anyways. It's pretty crusty on the inside, so this control arm is not really the best shape on the inside anyways. But that's fixed. Back to where we were a few hours ago. Yeah, it's back together. What a pain in the ass that was. This is the good side. I thought this wouldn't be that bad. But she's bolted in there and tight. And everything's lining up perfectly fine. Sway bar, I was kind of worried if the sway bar was bent or not, but it went right into. So next is drive shaft and the diff trans fucking torque mount thing or whatever the hell it's called. Film all of this with the braces back in. I had to lower the diff down a bit and lower the trans a bit and line everything up. There's a little shim in here that I didn't know about that came out. It was an absolute pain in the ass to get that shim back in there. And then these press in as well. And if that's poking up a little bit, you can't slide it right. It's just a pain in the ass. So I got it in and I got the front back in. I'm gonna leave the exhaust off for right now because if I do lift that motor or like rotate it or something, it's just better if there's less stuff attached to it right now. The exhaust is 2 bolts to put back on later. Plus I don't have that flange, so I'll get a flange from between now and then. I have the whole wire harness and the grounds and everything back on. The only thing is I'm missing these 2 bolts here. It's spun right now. I'll have to change it when I get around to it, but I'm gonna have to put a nut and bolt in here, or it feels like it's threaded. I don't know if it's supposed to be studs and they're unthreaded out of there or what, but I'm gonna have to figure out nut and bolt for that. I think it only really holds this plate, so it doesn't do much. It would be nice to remember to put those bolts back later down the road. But yeah, that's I believe that's the whole rear diff and subframe assembly put back together. It was a total pain in the ass from a lot of the dumb shit that you run into, like cutting a control arm open just to weld a nut in there, among all the other things of things being twisted and fucking. Somebody also had that torque tube out because I think it had a clutch put in it and they were all marked. Someone wrote front and back on them, so I don't even know if that back bolt's the right bolt because it looks completely different. But yeah, that's the rear subframe done at least. I'm gonna clean up all my stuff and probably move on to the front. But the problem is I only get like 1 day out of the whole week to work on this thing, so at least I'll edit this video together, and I don't know how long this video is gonna be, but at least I'll have something to post for Sunday.